It was the kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful. Claire Dawson stood in the hallway, staring at the nursery door, her hand hovering just above the doorknob. There was no laughter, no babbling, no clattering of toys. Just quiet.
Et un natural quiet.
She checked the clock in the kitchen, 7:42 a.m. Liam and Lucy were usually bouncing off the walls by this time, racing around in footy pajamas, dragging their stuffed animals behind them like trophies from an overnight war. But today, nothing. Claire's fingers finally wrapped around the doorknob. She twisted it gently. Not locked. But when she pushed, the door wouldn't budge. Resistance. Not like furniture blocking the door resistance, but something softer. Squishier. Like bodies. Liam? Lucy? She called, her voice catching. No answer. No movement. She leaned her shoulder into the door, giving it a firmer push. It moved a few inches, creaking slightly. Just enough to reveal two tiny figures sitting on the floor, backs pressed tightly against the door, blocking it with their little bodies. Her heart skipped. Guys, what are you doing?
Still no réponse.
Liam was clutching his worn-out teddy bear, the one missing an ear. His eyes were wide, staring, not at her, but across the room. Lucy sat beside him, hands in her lap, her posture unnaturally stiff for a 3-year-old. Neither child turned to look at her. Neither giggled. Neither moved. Claire crouched, trying to see past them into the room. All she could make out was the familiar nursery setup, the twin beds, the pastel curtains dancing lightly with the draft from the window she always forgot to close. But the corner, the farthest corner, was swallowed in shadow. That was where they were staring.
Sweethearts, what is going on?
Why are you blocking the door? Lucy slowly lifted her hand, her finger trembling as she pointed to that shadowed corner. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Claire's unease deepened. Her breath shortened as she gave the door one more push, enough to slip her body halfway through. The twins didn't stop her, but they didn't help either. They remained rooted in place like little sentinels. She reached forward and gently touched Lucy's shoulder. Cold.
Clammy. Slightly shaking. Hey, it's okay, Claire whispered. There's nothing there.
But even as she said it, her eyes darted back to the corner. And then, she heard it.
A faint sound, almost a hum. Like a lullaby.
But distorted, broken, like a cassette tape being eaten by an old player.
The tu noix.
Claire knew every lullaby she had ever sung to her children. This one wasn't from her world. Did you hear that? She murmured. Liam nodded. Slowly. His grip on the bear tightened until its stuffing bulged. Claire stood upright, trying to steady her own breathing. Then from the corner, a toy car rolled out. Not fast. Not tossed. Just rolled. Deliberately. Slowly. As if pushed by an invisible hand. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Lucy turned her head slightly, just enough to whisper, "Don't go there, Mommy."
Claire blinked. What do you mean, don't? Another sound. Not the lullaby this time. Something like whispering.
Several voices overlapping, low and slurred, as if underwater. Claire stepped back instinctively. Her heart thudded in her chest. And still, her children stayed in front of the door, not trying to get out. That was when she realized. They weren't blocking her from coming in. They were keeping something from coming out. Claire didn't sleep much that night. Even after the twins finally dozed off in her bed, curled up against each other like two halves of the same whole, Claire sat in the rocking chair by the window, staring at the nursery door. Every creak of the old house made her flinch. Every gust of autumn wind against the siding reminded her of the whispers. By morning, the shadows in the nursery were gone, swallowed by the pale sunlight spilling through the curtains. But the unease remained. Her children acted as if nothing had happened. They ate their cereal, fought over who got the blue spoon, and laughed at cartoons on the television. Claire tried to laugh with them. Pretend. But every time she looked at their faces, she remembered the way Lucy's finger had trembled when she pointed to the corner, the way Liam's knuckles had turned white around his teddy bear. Children forget, she told herself. Their fear passes quickly. That's what makes them resilient. But she couldn't forget. That night, when she tucked them into bed, she hesitated before leaving the room. The monitor was already on the dresser, its small red light glowing. She kissed them each on the forehead. "Mommy's right here," she whispered. Lucy blinked up at her, eyes wide, as if she wanted to say something. But she didn't. Claire closed the door and went to her room, leaving the monitor beside her bed.
For a long time, only silence.
Then static.
And then, à l'ulabi.
Her heart stopped. It wasn't her voice, but it was meant to sound like her. Off-key, drawn out, the words slurred together.
A parody of comfort. Claire froze, staring at the monitor. Go to sleep, my little ones. Mommy is here. Mommy is here.
Her own voice caught in her throat. She couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The song cut off abruptly, replaced by a low hum, followed by the sound of something scraping against wood. Claire's chest tightened. She bolted upright and ran into the nursery. The twins were awake, sitting upright in bed. Lucy clutched Liam's hand. Neither of them was crying. Neither looked surprised. They looked like they were waiting. Who was singing?
Claire's voice cracked.
Lucy tilted her head slightly, her gaze sliding toward the corner again. Liam buried his face in his teddy bear.
Claire switched on the overhead light.
Nothing. Just toys scattered across the floor, storybooks stacked on the nightstand, curtains swaying lightly in the draft. "Did you hear it?" she asked again. This time, Lucy whispered. "It wasn't you." Claire's stomach twisted. For the rest of the night, she didn't leave their side. The next morning, she tried to rationalize it. Old monitors pick up interference. Maybe the neighbors had their TV on. Maybe she was overtired and hallucinating. But then she found the drawings. Scattered across the nursery floor, torn from their coloring books.
Black crayon scrolled across the page.
Not the usual childlike scribbles of houses and suns and stick figures. These were spirals, circles within circles, crude symbols she didn't recognize. In one drawing, a tall figure stood beside two small ones. In another, dozens of black eyes stared outward from a corner.
Claire s'en shook as she gathered them up.
"Liam?
Lucy?
Did you draw these?" Neither answered. Lucy looked down at the floor. Liam squeezed his bear tighter. Claire shoved the drawings into a drawer, trying not to let them see her panic. By afternoon, she couldn't keep it to herself anymore. She crossed the street to the old brick house where Mrs. Elkins lived. The woman had been on her porch almost every day since Claire moved in, wrapped in a wool shawl, watching the neighborhood with eyes that missed nothing. Claire had always found her sharp, a little too nosy. But today she needed her. "Mrs. Elkins," Claire said, clutching the folder of drawings. "Can I ask you something about this house?" The old woman's eyes flickered. "I wondered how long it would take."
Claire stiffened.
"What do you mean?"
You've heard it, haven't you?
Mrs. Elkins's voice dropped.
The singeing. Claire's blood ran cold. Mrs. Elkins's motioning for her to sit.
"Families don't stay in that house long. Not since," she trailed off, her lips tightening.
The dosson. That is what the record say.
"They left in the middle of the night. Didn't even take their belongings."
No one ever saw them again.
"But why?" Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The old woman hesitated. "They said their children talked to things no one else could see."
Heard voices. Drew strange marks on the walls.
The parents thought it was games, imagination. Until they realized it wasn't. Claire's grip tightened on the drawings. "They called the children watchers," Mrs. Elkins added.
Gatekeeper.
"I don't know what that means. I don't want to know." Claire swallowed hard.
"And you think?"
"I don't think," Mrs. Elkins cut her off. "I know. That house holds things better left alone." Claire left with her heart pounding, the word watchers echoing in her ears. That evening, she tried to convince herself it was just an old woman's superstition. But when she walked into the nursery, she froze.
On the wall, above a toy chest, a new drawing in black crayon.
She hadn't seen the twins pick up a crayon all day. Yet there it was. It was a door.
Black, heavy, drawn with frantic stroke.
And underneath, in shaky letters far too neat for a 3-year-old.
"Do not open."
Claire stared at it, her mouth dry. Behind her, Lucy's small voice broke the silence. He wants to come through.
Claire spun around.
Who? Neither child answered. But they didn't need to.
The air in the room grew heavy, and from the monitor on the nightstand came the faintest sound. The lullaby again.
Not hers. Never hers. Claire backed toward the door, pulling the twins with her, her hands trembling. Something shifted in the corner, darker than shadow, curling upward like smoke. And for the first time, Claire realized this wasn't just a haunting. It wasn't just fear. It was an invitation. The power went out just after midnight. Claire was still awake, staring at the nursery monitor glowing on her nightstand. She hadn't heard the lullaby again since the previous night, but the silence wasn't comforting. It felt like the house was holding its breath. When the lights blinked off with a faint pop, she sat upright in bed. Outside, wind rattled the windows. The temperature in the room dropped sharply, enough to make her pull the blanket closer around her shoulders. She checked her phone. No signal.
Then came the sound. Not through the monitor.
Not from the hallway.
From somewhere else, closer, deeper. A long, dragging whisper. Not word, just a sound.
As if something ancient was shifting behind the walls. Claire grabbed the flashlight from her drawer and stepped into the hallway. It was cold enough to see her breath. The nursery door was ajar. That, more than anything else, set her on edge. She had closed it. She remembered doing so. She never left it open at night. As she approached, the air grew thicker, almost oily. Her skin prickled with static, and the floorboards groaned beneath her feet like they were resisting her weight. She pushed the door open. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the soft outlines of toys, stuffed animals, and the twin beds, both empty. Her heart lurched. Then she saw them. Liam and Lucy stood side by side in front of the window, facing the corner of the room, their backs to her. Neither of them moved. Liam?
Lucy? Claire's voice trembled.
Neither responded. She stepped into the room, shining the flashlight toward the corner. Nothing.
Just the same old shadow.
But they were thicker now. Heavier. They didn't recede under the light like they should have. Instead, they seemed to drink it in. Lucy turned slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. He's here now. Claire swallowed hard.
Où est-il?
Liam didn't speak. He raised a hand and pointed toward the darkness. Claire's flashlight flickered. For a split second, she saw it.
Something standing in the corner.
It wasn't fully formed. More like smoke given shape.
Tall, impossibly tall.
Arms too long, head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its body wavered like heat distortion, and its edges bled into the shadows. No eyes. No face.
Juste présence.
Claire staggered back, heart pounding. The air grew colder, pressing against her skin like icy fingers. Her breath came out in fast, visible gasps. She grabbed the twins by their hands, but they didn't move. He's watching you, Lucy whispered. He wants to see if you'll stop him.
Claire poulardait.
We need to leave. Now.
Still, the children resisted.
Their feet rooted to the floor like they were part of the house itself. Then the figure shifted. It moved, not walked, but glided forward, a slow unraveling of darkness stretching toward them. Claire dropped the flashlight. The beam swung wildly across the ceiling before settling into stillness on the carpet. The shadows deepened. The room seemed to bend inward. Claire felt a pressure in her chest, like something was trying to squeeze the air from her lungs. Her legs buckled, and she fell to her knees. Lucy cried out, her voice sharp with panic. Stop. The figure paused. Not much. But enough. Enough for Claire to reach the children, wrap her arms around them. Her skin was numb from the cold. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Then Liam, who had been silent all this time, stepped forward. His small hand stretched outward, trembling. No, he said. Just one word. The figure twitched.
The shadow around it rippled like disturbed water.
Lucy followed, reaching toward her brother, and they stood together, hands outstretched, side by side.
Go back, Lucy whispered.
The shadow didn't move at first. Then it shrieked. Not a sound anyone could hear with their ears. No, this was deeper.
A vibration in the bones, a pressure behind the eyes.
The The walls seemed to shudder, and the glass in the window cracked.
Claire screamed, clutching the children close.
Then the figure unraveled. Like threads being pulled from a tapestry, it came apart, one strand of shadow at a time. It dissolved into the floor, into the walls, into the air, until the only thing left was silence. Not peace. A silence so deep it felt hollow. Claire sat frozen on the floor, her arms around her children, her breathing ragged. The flashlight still lay where she had dropped it, its beam fading. The twins didn't speak. Claire finally whispered, "What was that?" Neither answered. But as she turned to look at them, she saw it in their eyes. Recognition. Not fear.
Not confusion.
They had seen it before. They knew what it was. The lights flickered on suddenly, the heater kicked back to life, and the normal hum of the house returned. But nothing felt normal. Claire rose slowly, guiding the twins back to their beds. She tucked them in gently, brushing the hair from their foreheads, her hands still shaking.
"Do you want to sleep with me tonight?" Lucy shook her head. "It's gone for now."
Claire tried to press further, but Liam turned away, pulling the blanket up to his chin. She left the door open as she stepped out. She couldn't bear to close it. Back in her room, she didn't sleep. She stared at the monitor. The lullaby didn't return. No toys moved.
Just stillness.
But now she understood something she hadn't before. Her children hadn't just reacted to the presence in the corner. They had confronted it. They had resisted it. And it had listened. Which meant it could come back. And next time, it might not be so easily pushed away. The next morning brought sunlight, but Claire didn't feel its warmth. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold in her hands, staring blankly out the window. The twins were in the living room, stacking blocks and humming quietly to themselves. The sound should have been comforting. It wasn't. Her mind replayed the night over and over. The shadow, the suffocating cold, the way Liam and Lucy had raised their hands as if they knew exactly what to do. They hadn't screamed. They hadn't panicked. They had confronted the thing as though it was familiar. That frightened her more than the entity itself. When she finally looked toward the children, she saw Lucy pause in her building. She turned her head slowly, as though she sensed her mother watching, and met Claire's eyes. There was something too old in her expression, a weight far beyond her 3 years. Claire looked away, her stomach tightening.
All day, the feeling grew heavier.
At nap time, she lingered outside their bedroom door, listening.
Not for the lullaby.
For them.
The whisper.
Sure enough, she heard them. Low voices, rhythmic, in some language she didn't know. Liam's voice first, then Lucy's, back and forth, like a chant. Claire opened the door quickly. The twins sat up in bed, startled, staring at her. "What were you saying?" she asked, trying to sound calm. "Nothing," Lucy replied.
Claire stepped closer. "No, he heard you."
What were those words? Liam clutched his teddy bear tighter. His lips trembled, but he said nothing. Claire's chest ached. She wanted to believe it was harmless imagination, children making up a game. But the memory of the night before lingered, undeniable. Later that evening, when the children were drawing at the table, Claire peeked over their shoulders. More spirals. More eyes. More doors. She pulled one page toward her and felt a chill crawl up her spine. It was a crude sketch of herself.
Standing in the nursery.
And behind her, a tall shadow with arms stretched wide. Her hand shook as she folded the paper and slipped it into her pocket. That night, sleep eluded her again. She lay awake in bed, listening. At some point, she drifted into a fitful doze, only to be jolted awake by a dream. In it, she was standing in the nursery, rocking the twins in her arms. They felt warm, heavy, safe. Then the lullaby began. At first, it came from her lips. But slowly, it changed. The melody warped, her voice deepening, becoming something not her own. The twins squirmed in her arms. They began to cry. And in the dream, she tightened her grip. Too tight. She felt her fingernails digging into their skin, felt their breath faltering. She woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat. Her hand throbbed. When she turned on the lamp, she saw the marks on her palm. Red welts, as though she had clutched something with desperate force. She pressed her face into her hands. Something was wrong. Not just with the house. With her. By morning, she couldn't bear it alone anymore. She went back to Mrs. Elkins. The old woman opened the door with a knowing look.
You saw it again.
Claire nodded, her voice unsteady. My kids, it's like they know it. Like they're connected to it somehow. They talk in some language I don't understand. They draw things that make no sense. Last night I dreamed I was hurting them. And when I woke up, she held out her hand, showing the marks. Mrs. Elkins pursed her lips, then motioned her inside. She led Claire to the living room, where shelves of old books lined the walls. She pulled one down, its leather cover cracked with age, and flipped it open. Inside were sketches, old symbols, drawings of dark figures not unlike the ones Claire had seen in her children's drawings. They called them watchers, Mrs. Elkins said softly.
Children born with sight.
They don't just see what we can't, they hold it back. They are the gate between worlds.
Without them, the shadow moved freely. Claire stared.
You're saying my children. They didn't choose it, Mrs. Elkins interrupted.
It chose them.
Some families, some bloodlines, carry the burden.
Maybe
the house found them. I don't know. But I know this, what you saw is real. And your children are not victims. They are shields.
Claire shook her head.
They're just kids. They're 3 years old. 3 or 30 or 300, it doesn't matter.
Innocence is what hold the darkness at bay. Innocence and love.
But the darkness is patient.
It wait for do.
For fear. Claire's throat tightened. Doubt. Fear. That was all she had left. On the walk home, her thoughts spiraled.
Could it be true?
Were her children gatekeepers? Protectors? Or was this just folklore, old stories twisted into something more? That evening, she watched them closely. They laughed at cartoons, they fought over crayons, they begged for cookies before dinner. They were children. But when she tucked them into bed, Lucy reached up, touching her cheek with a tiny hand. Don't be afraid of us, Mommy, she whispered.
Claire froze.
Why would I be afraid? Lucy's eyes glistened. Because he told you to. Claire's heart plummeted. Who told me?
The man in the corner.
She stumbled back, her pulse racing. Lucy rolled over and closed her eyes as if the conversation were finished. Claire left the room, her legs trembling beneath her. Alone in her bedroom, she tried to convince herself she was imagining it all. But deep down, she knew she wasn't. Something lived in that house. Something that wanted her fear. And the more she doubted, the more it would win. Still, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, one thought refused to leave her mind. What if her children weren't just protecting her from the darkness? What if they were part of it? The storm began just after dusk. Thunder rolled across the sky, shaking the windows of the old house. Rain lashed against the siding, and wind whistled through cracks in the walls. Claire tried to keep busy, cleaning dishes, folding laundry, anything to drown out the restlessness gnawing at her. But the unease never left. The twins were quieter than usual. They sat together on the couch, neither laughing nor fighting, their eyes fixed on the darkened windows. Every time thunder cracked, Lucy would squeeze Liam's hand, and he would nod silently. Claire noticed. They weren't startled by the storm. They were waiting. When bedtime came, she lingered longer than usual in the nursery. She read 2 stories instead of 1, kissed their foreheads twice. Her hands shook as she pulled the blankets up around them. Mommy's right here, she whispered, her throat tight. Lucy looked at her with solemn eyes.
Not for long.
The words chilled Claire to the bone. She forced a smile, kissed them again, and left the door open a crack. Back in her room, she sat on the bed, the monitor glowing faintly beside her. The storm raged on outside, but inside, the air grew unnaturally still. And then the lullaby began. This time, there was no mistaking it. It was her voice. Claire's stomach turned. The monitor whispered in her own tone, but warped, slower, twisted. The words slurred together, but the melody was hers, the lullaby she had sung since the twins were born. She clutched the sheets, bile rising in her throat. No, she whispered. The monitor hissed with static, then grew clearer.
Sleep, little ones. Mommy is here. Mommy is here.
Claire slammed her hand down on the monitor, silencing it, but the lullaby didn't stop. It was in the room now, vibrating through the walls, echoing inside her head. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She grabbed the flashlight and ran for the nursery. The door was wide open. Inside, the temperature had plummeted. Her breath came out in clouds. The twins were sitting upright in their beds, clutching each other, their eyes locked on the corner. The shadow was back. But it was different this time. Larger. Stronger. No longer a half-formed shape, but a looming figure that stretched nearly to the ceiling. Its arms bent wrong, its head cocked at an angle that made Claire's stomach twist. And this time, it wasn't watching the children. It was watching her. Claire's legs nearly gave out, but she forced herself forward. "Stay away from them," she shouted, though her voice shook. The shadow tilted its head. Then it moved. Not toward the twins. Toward her. She stumbled back, the flashlight trembling in her hand. The beam cut across its body, but instead of dispelling it, the light bent, absorbed.
The walls pulsed with darkness.
Something pressed into her chest. Not physical hands, but weight. She couldn't breathe. She fell to her knees, clutching her throat. And then she heard it.
A whisper inside her head. Familiar.
Intimate. "Let me in." Her hands shook violently. She tried to scream, but no sound came out.
The pressure grew heavier, and the world blurred.
Her own arms lifted against her will.
The flashlight clattered to the floor.
She was standing now, though she hadn't chosen to. Her body moved stiffly, as if pulled by strings. She turned toward the beds, toward her children. No. Inside her mind, Claire screamed. Fought. But her body kept walking, one step at a time, closing the distance between her and the twins. Her hand reached for the toy chest, closing around a wooden block with a jagged edge.
Lucie criait out.
"Mommy."
Claire's vision swam. Tears stung her eyes.
She tried to stop, tried to drop the block, but her fingers wouldn't obey. "Mommy, come back," Liam pleaded, his small voice breaking. And then Lucy shouted, her words sharp and desperate.
"We love you. Please don't leave us." Something cracked inside Claire. Love. The word ran through her chest, louder than the whisper, stronger than the weight.
For a heartbeat, she seized control. She clenched her hand, not around the block, but into her own skin, her nails digging deep into her palm. Pain jolted through her body.
The shadow recoiled.
Claire gasped for air, dropping the block, collapsing to the floor. Her chest burned, but she was herself again. She looked up. The twins had climbed out of bed, their tiny hands clasped together, faces pale but resolute. They raised their arms. In unison, they spoke words Claire didn't understand. Harsh syllables, ancient and foreign, rolling off their tongues with unnatural precision.
The air vibrated.
The shadow writhed, twisting violently, its form unraveling.
Go back, Lucie criait.
No more, Liam added. The figure shrieked, a soundless roar that rattled the window panes and made the walls tremble. But the children didn't flinch. Their voices grew louder, their bond unbroken. Light burst from their joined hands, spilling across the room. The shadow convulsed, splintered, and then tore apart, dissolving into smoke that vanished into the cracks of the floorboards.
Silence fell. Réel silence.
The room warmed. The storm outside quieted. Claire crawled forward and pulled the twins into her arms, sobbing with relief. She kissed their heads, whispering over and over, "I'm here. I'm here." The children clung to her. For a long time, they stayed that way. By morning, the storm had passed.
Sunlight streamed through the curtain, casting golden patterns on the walls.
The house felt lighter, as though the weight had lifted. Claire dared to believe it was over. But then she saw the paper. It was taped to the back of the nursery door.
A drawing in black crayon, jagged and frantic.
It showed 3 figures, herself, Liam and Lucy, standing before a massive black door. The door was covered in eyes, hundreds of them, all staring outward. Beneath the drawing were 4 words, scrawled in shaky letters. For now.
Not forever. Claire's blood ran cold.
She turned to the twins, who were sitting quietly on the floor.
Lucie met her gaze, her voice barely a whisper.
We closed it this time. But one day, someone else will have to watch.
Claire sank against the wall, her en trembling.
The truth settled over her like a shadow she could never escape. This wasn't an ending. It was only a pause. And as she held her children close, she wondered what kind of future awaited them. Were they saviors, or sacrifices? Protectors, or prisoners of something greater than all of them? She didn't know. All she knew was that they were hers. And she would love them, fight for them, and stand with them, no matter how many shadows came knocking. But deep inside, she feared the day the door opened again. And when it did, she prayed love would be enough.